In today's episode, 6 feet out or 6 feet up. Mr. Very Important doesn't want any AC on him in the middle of summer. So I wore the wrong type of underwear in the pool. So let's get started. 6 feet out or 6 feet up. I was reminiscing with my family about my late grandfather and some of the tomfoolery he got up to. I thought this story made a perfect post for this sub. Backstory. Decades ago, my grandparents purchased a large plot of land out in the middle of nowhere with the idea to build themselves a home and retire on that plot. They were both from the rural Midwest, so they originally wanted to keep horses, chickens, and maybe a few other small farm animals on this land, hence the size. As the years went by and they started actually making plans, they realized that horses weren't really feasible for a variety of reasons. By that time the area around their plot of land had been significantly more developed, so they instead split the plot into 8 pieces and sold the other 7, essentially financing their original purchase and the construction of the house, leaving their retirement and pension untouched. Because of their incredibly advantageous position, they made a point to only sell to like-minded buyers, friendly retirees who were looking for their last home and wanted a bit of the same rural isolation that my grandparents wanted. The result is that my grandparents ended up with their dream bungalow on a spacious lot surrounded by friendly neighbors, and without any major time or money obligations. They ended up spending a lot of time volunteering and generally making friends with the community that was growing around them. The event. The area ended up becoming incorporated, and the town they were now living in eventually decided that the 2-lane blacktop road needed to be repaved and upgraded with sidewalks, gutters, and all the other amenities townspeople expect. Now the county that the town was incorporated from had planned ahead, and there was plenty of room set aside for exactly this type of project, so none of the residents needed to move their fences or give up property to the state. However, most of them had placed their mailboxes on a post about a half dozen of feet from their property line nearer to the road so that the postman had easy access. When the construction started, a city representative visited each property on this street and gave them a heads up on what to expect, and also asked that the residents move their mailboxes to make room for construction. My grandfather, being of light schedule and helpful demeanor, offered to help his neighbors temporarily relocate their mailbox and post. He had retired from a career as a handyman, and several of his children owned landscaping or similar businesses. So he and my uncle spent a few hours with a mini backhoe and unearthed all 8 of his neighbors' mailbox posts, cement and all. He saved the posts to reinstall when the road was complete, and mounted the mailbox proper on each property's fence. The issue. Lo and behold, on Monday they had no mail service. After a bit of investigation, they realized none of their neighbors did either. So the next morning my grandfather waited outside to see what the problem was. Right on time, the mailman drove down their side of the street, completely ignoring all 8 properties. Redoubling his efforts, the next morning my grandfather was able to flag the mailman down and ask what the problem was. According to my grandfather, the very curt response was, "I'm not required to deliver to any mailbox more than 36 from the edge of the road." A call to the postal service confirmed this rule. The mailman may deliver outside that limit if they want, but they are not required to. The compliance. Now it's pretty amazing what you can get done with 8 business hours of free time. The problem was that 36 from the current edge of the road is in the way of construction. My grandfather spoke to the construction supervisor, who was sympathetic, but just as stuck as my grandfather was. My grandfather then visited the postal office and returned with a current copy of the regulations about mailbox locations. After a few hours of study, and another visit to the construction supervisor's office with a half dozen donuts and some coffee, he had formulated a plan. Remember his sons who ran landscaping businesses? My grandfather got in his truck and visited both businesses. He returned home with 8 20-gallon plant pots. These things are huge, 30 tall, and just about as large around. You see, while the construction guys couldn't mess with a federally protected, fixed mailbox, they were happy to move a pot out of their way in the morning and back when the job was finished for the day, my grandma makes some pretty damn good donuts, which is a pretty easy task when you have earth-moving equipment nearby. So each post was replanted in a 20-gallon pot and each mailbox was remounted on a post and each pot was placed conservatively within 36 of the current road's edge. The kicker was that a mailbox post that is meant to stick 4 feet out of the ground has at least 2 feet buried in the ground. In other words, it's a 6-foot post. When you put that inside a pot with a few inches of soil underneath, and that pot on the surface of the ground, a mailbox on top is easily more than 6 feet in the air. You see, the mailbox codes clearly specify how far horizontally a mailbox needs to be from the road, but say nothing about how high that mailbox needs to be. It took a few more conversations with the postman and a visit from the local inspector, but the mailman spent the better part of 6 months delivering to 8 mailboxes 6 feet in the air rather than walk the extra 6 feet to the fence. Mr. Very Important doesn't want any AC on him in the middle of summer. I work in building operations for some high-rise office buildings in sunny Southern California. I maintain electrical systems, plumbing, HVAC, basically anything within the building I fix. My background is HVAC, with plenty of certifications and experience in how things work. The building I'm currently at has covers on the thermostats to prevent tenants from messing with them. Side note, our HVAC system is a pneumatic system that uses air pressure to operate everything. You need a specialty gauge to check what the pneumatic signal is calling for, heating, cooling, or nothing. This is why we don't let tenants adjust their own stats, because without the gauge you're only guessing what you're doing. Anyways, Mr. Very Important puts in a call he is way too cold. No problem, I go up and find his thermostat has had the cover pried off and set to 68 degrees, and then half put back on. I check my gauge and it's operating properly for being set at 68. I adjust it back up to 72, which is standard temperature, and let Mr. Very Important know someone had messed with the thermostat, and that's why he was so cold. Halfway through telling him, he cuts me off and says I don't care about the thermostat, I want these vents shut down. I don't want to feel any air. I try to explain it will be a lot more comfortable in a few minutes and shutting the vents is not a good idea in the summer. Well, Mr. Very Important isn't having it. After all, he's very important and knows better than me how comfort cooling works despite my decade-plus experience. And to top it off, he's an absolute cunt about the whole thing. After being cut off for the 3rd time, I finally had enough and say, okay, no problem. You want the vents completely shut? And he responds, yes, if I feel any air blow on me we're going to have issues that your boss will have to sort out. So I shut the vents completely at the damper at AC box. No air will come out. Well, I've dealt with very important people before, and I know what to expect. So I put a note on the work order. Mr. Very Important asked for no air to come out of the vents in his office despite my objections, so vents have been shut per tenant request. If you're aware, the West Coast is going through a gnarly heat wave right now, so naturally Mr. Very Important puts in a call office is too hot. I accept the call, but I go on my way doing my normal duties, which I'm very busy with as we just had one of 4 people on our team leave. So it takes me 3 days to get back to Mr. Very Important's office, and he's losing his shit at how hot it is. And to be fair, his office was like a sauna. I'd be pissed too if I had to work in that office. I ask if he wants his vents opened back up to allow the air to flow into his office and cool it down. Dude looks like I just kicked his dog when he realizes closing the vents was his demand that I tried to talk him out of. I open them up real quick, because it's very easy, and I leave. Apparently he didn't like being called out like that and called my property managers to complain. I'm not sure what they said back to him, but I certainly got a good laugh out of the whole thing. So I wore the wrong type of underwear in the pool. I, 24M, hosted a friend from college, also 24M, that I haven't seen since before the pandemic. Shortly after he arrives, we head to a local bar and grill in our neighborhood. We decided to do the 15 to 20 minute walk instead of drive, so we didn't have to worry about leaving the car. I was joined by my roommate, 25M, and also a good friend, and his new-ish girlfriend, 22F, who I don't know that well, but I have always had friendly encounters with when we have hung out. At the bar, drinks flowed freely, and my friends seemed to really hit it off with our crew. We stayed longer than expected, and it was fully dark, and we were well buzzed by the time we decided to walk home. It was still hot outside when we got to the apartment complex, so my roommate suggested that we hit the community pool. The pool and hot tub were technically closed for the night, but it isn't too close to any of the units and generally no one cares if you are responsible and don't break glass bottles or anything like that. After debating whether to head back to our place to change first, my roommate insisted that we're all friends here and that we could all just go in the pool in our underwear. Everyone agreed on this, although my roommate's girlfriend announced, "You guys have fun with that," and proceeded to lounge next to the pool on one of the deck chairs and scroll Instagram. We strip down and hop in the pool, and are having a pretty good time just messing around. After some time had passed, my roommate was chatting with his girlfriend, and then quietly approached me afterwards. Apparently his girlfriend was very uncomfortable with me wearing just briefs in the pool. Both my roommate and my friend were wearing boxer briefs, and she wanted me to go all the way back to the apartment and change into a swimsuit. I initially protested and said it was his idea in the first place, and how everyone was in their underwear, and none of us cared, and what's the difference? It's not like my underwear was white/see-through or anything like that. My roommate asked me to go change for him as a favor, so that it didn't turn into an issue between him and her. I was pissed but decided to let it go for the time being. When I got back to the apartment, an idea popped into my head when it occurred to me that I still had a swimsuit from when I used to swim on the club team in college. So I put on my Speedo and head back out armed with another six-pack for the boys and only a t-shirt, towel wrapped around my waist, and flip-flops. I get back to the pool, announced I had changed into my swimsuit, as requested, drop the towel and ditch the tee, and launch into a wicked cannonball into the pool. I can see a wry smile on my roommate's face, but nothing else was said about my choice of attire. We go on in the pool, and a few minutes later she announces that she's tired and is going to bed. We stay out late, including more beers and laughs in the hot tub, while the girlfriend was asleep at our place. Thanks for watching.